Yeah, it's too hot out there.
I think it's still working. So.
There we go. Okay. Okay, I'd like to call the Comox Valley Regional District Regular Board meeting of Tuesday, July 26th to order. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. And for those in the gallery, if you need to use the washrooms, they're back out the hallway that you came and behind the boardroom in the hallway. And in case of emergency, you can exit the way you came or the 2 doors on the side, and the marshalling station is behind you in the parking lot. Okay, we have the calls to action. So it's become a common practice of the board to read from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action in order to educate ourselves and the public. And today we have call to action number 9, which is about education. We call upon the federal government to prepare and publish annual reports comparing funding for the education of First Nations children on and off reserve, as well as educational and income attainments of Aboriginal peoples in Canada compared with non-Aboriginal people. And with that, we move to adoption. We do have it in camera.
Yes.
So we will
be turned in camera at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, we'll be moving in camera after the regular board meeting, according to section
It's 91C.
91C of the community charter.
Yeah.
So that was Morin and Grieve. Thank you. And all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And so that takes us to adoption of minutes. And we have adoption of minutes for July 12th in the regular board meeting. Grant and Arbor, thank you. Any discussion of those minutes? And all in favor of receipt? That's carried. Thank you. And we're on to the noise bylaw amendments for auto racing.
Madam Chair, before we go into that, this is Director Lee. I'm going to request that the minutes from the Black Creek Oyster Bay, item F2, that's listed at the top of the agenda, be moved forward just before you deal with the auto racing stuff.
Are you sure you don't want to sit through that?
I've read a lot about it. I don't get to vote on it, so.
So is there a motion to vary the agenda to bring forward F2?
So moved.
Grieve and Amir, thank you. All right, so those are the minutes from the Black Creek Oyster Bay Service Committee for July 11th.
Move receipt.
Thank you, Lee and Grant. Director Arbor, go. Oh. It's not working. Sorry, technical difficulties. We did have it running before.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Arbor. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I realize the minutes of Black Creek Oyster Bay Service Committee does not cover what I'm going to talk about, but because it's come out as an email to the directors and the media since, is it possible to have a brief update on the fissure that is near the water plant at the Black Creek Oyster Bay system? The leak, yeah. Because it sounded like might be a bit more of an emergency than we thought.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, directors. I'll ask Chris LaRose, our acting general manager of engineering services, to respond to that question about the BCOB water service. Afternoon, through the chair. Last week our operators noticed a steep increase in the amount of water being consumed or generated in the Black Creek Oyster Bay service area, and worked methodically to identify the source of that consumption, and they narrowed it down to a section of our largest section of pipe within the Black Creek system, Black Creek Oyster Bay system, right adjacent to the treatment plant. So it's almost a 1 meter diameter pipe that acts as a contact tank for the chlorination coming out of the treatment plant. And it just so happens that all of the flow in that system runs through that pipe. So we've established a bypass, but it's much smaller diameter. So it's constraining the amount of water that's able to be fed into that system. So in the interim, we've had to implement stage 3 water restrictions just to ensure that we can meet demand. But as soon as we put that bypass in and took that pipe out of service, our water consumption dropped by half. So it was a very major leak coming into the ground at that location.
Director Harper?
Is there any risk that before our next ESC meeting on August, I guess they'll have Black Creek Oyster Bay on August 8th, but is there any risk that we can move to stage 4 and stage 5 and this could escalate depending on what we're seeing with the heat wave or anything like that, or that's not a concern at this point?
It's certainly something we've been thinking closely about and taking mitigating steps. So we're pretty confident at this point that we'll be able to manage demand with that combination of the stage 3. So we did put the appeal out to the community to use as little water as possible, highlighting that the more successful they are at reducing their consumption, the less likely we will be to have to implement a further stage of restriction. So that being said, it is very bad timing to have a leak of this type given the weather right now and the forecast. So, but we are optimistic that we can meet demand. But we're monitoring it very closely. In the event that we aren't keeping up, we will endeavor to provide as much time as possible, or notice as possible. At this point, though, we're fairly optimistic that won't be required. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so we're still on receipt of the minutes from July 11th. It's a vote of the full board. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And we'll go back to the regular agenda, which we are on D1, the noise bylaw amendment for auto racing. Grant Narber, thank you. And pass it to staff to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. You'll recall at the July 12th board meeting, there was a discussion around the noise bylaw that was recently adopted and amendments to it. And the directors provided resolution to come back to this meeting with a report that would identify options for further amendments to the noise bylaw. That staff report is here attached, and we do have staff in attendance that can answer any questions or support the discussion as you will. So, Madam Chair, we don't have much more of a presentation than that.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a question from Director Reeve? Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think what we have before us today is probably the best possible compromise given the current circumstances. It's a better balance with the legal operations of the business and the concerns of some of the residents. The report comes with a staff recommendation that the Speedway can operate 5 days a week with Monday and Tuesdays quiet, Wednesdays and Thursdays practice night over at 8 o'clock, Friday and Saturday race nights winding up at 9:30, and Sundays as a matinee only finishing at 5 o'clock. This will bring predictability and certainty and allow one evening a week where residents can enjoy a barbecue with a family or friends in the peace and quiet of their own backyards. So I will be supporting this. I understand the recommendation would be to bring it forward on August 9th and bring it up to third reading and then wait till August 30th before we actually do final adoption. So I don't know, Director Hillian probably knows the quote better than me, but what is it? Act in haste and repent at leisure. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Arbour, you're next.
Yeah, thanks. That's really long. I'll just stand here. Yeah, my first thing is it's kind of been fun to do all these debates at the CVRD board, but typically this would get kicked back to the ESC for consideration. So I'm wondering if we should contemplate that will be a question to staff reading of those bylaws at the August 8th meeting and go back into our committee, because the last, including today, the last couple of times I've been before the board and I don't want to take too much time of the board. And I do have some comments because I wasn't here in person, so and there's been quite a bit more correspondence. It seems to be currently the issue that keeps on giving. And I'll just take the time because I think it's important to, and I think people are expecting, that's why we have a crowd here. People want to hear from us around what the current thinking is. the history of the file, I think has been at times misrepresented by everyone, and there's various understandings around how we get here. This is not a new file. The site has been legally non-compliant since 1986. There's a history of noise complaints around the site. There's been adjustments that have been made over time without the introduction of bylaws. I think we all know in 2021, when a rezoning application was put forward, what maybe not everyone realizes is that triggered a lot of complaints and concerns from not 10 residents. I'm talking about a steady flow of emails from months from many people. And so the noise bylaw, the consideration of noise was the key theme. And the rezoning application had very little to do with noise. It had to do with a campsite. And I didn't hear a lot of people actually complain about the potential noise from the campsite. The emails were about the noise from the track, which is a separate issue. So I think as directors, what we looked at is, can we deheat the rezoning application by looking at something around noise? And in February, the committee moved to have staff investigate the options. There's a range of options that exist from, I've learned way too much about noise playing through auto racing, but from decibel readers to time of week to controlled mufflers to et cetera, right? And there's such a wide view of what is acceptable and what's not. This was concurrent with the rezoning application. So we had both processes going at once, the research and then the rezoning. In 2022, later on, the rezoning was withdrawn. And as I said, I think at the last meeting, the noise bylaw was orphaned, but we continued to work on it. The staff report was really badly received initially by the concerned citizen and other residents. We got emails of people that are unaffiliated that felt, and still today, we still get emails even this weekend that some people feel it should be 2 days of auto racing, not 5. So, and those are residents of the area. So we realize that we're not gonna, as Director Grief said, we're not gonna please everyone. Okay, I'm getting long in the tooth. The options, I'm not settled on it yet. We could abandon the noise bylaw effort altogether, right? We could just scrap it, and that's. I was talking to a constituent who talked about the Langford situation. They don't have a noise bylaw that applies to auto racing. So what councils have done over the years is just rope it up. When complaints come, you just the local government won't be involved, and we're not going to get involved in it, right? So that's one policy option. Does it address the concerns of the neighbors? No, it doesn't. It's an issue that ends up persisting. We could keep the bylaws written. I think it was clear that we went too far with the 8 p.m. on every day. We can make changes that seem in principle supported by quite a few people, but not everyone again. Or we could bring in, could bring in further noise restrictions, right? Because we haven't addressed decibels, mufflers, and such. So the principles, so Dr. Grieve and Dr. Amir can hear where I'm at on it. That yes, the questions I'm asking, and I've joined the Facebook forums and all that stuff, is this a majority decision? Was one of the big things, like people are like, where both groups that have been involved in this issue, both interest groups have said, we're the majority. So one is like, we got 6,000 people, we're clearly the majority, and is the majority of Black Creek. And the other is like, well, wait, there's 800 of us, and most of us are residents of the area. My principle is the majority doesn't matter as much in an issue where, minorities can be seriously impacted. There's a reason, and on any issue, it's always like that, right? I don't think we live in a world where the majority necessarily crushes the minority. It's good to listen to each other's concerns, and that's what we're trying to do. And the majority is everyone. Ultimately, if you don't want to break your community, is it better to have a really tense relationship between the track and the residents, whether, no, if it was like 2 people, we all have 2 people, right, that are absolutely upset about everything that happens. But this is not 2 people in Black Creek. This is a major group that is unsatisfied with how things have been going. And then you'll say, well, for what reason? But to listen to concerns, and that's what we're trying to do at this table. And that's why the noise bylaw came up, to try to bring a framework that would bring security and predictability. To be honest, I think I heard the same from I didn't hear a lot of concern from the operator, but until we went a bit too far with the time. So again, we could drop it, but I think that bringing something that satisfies everybody is a good thing, or at least brings it to closer to what seems acceptable. There's been a lot of concerns about the rural directors and the staff handling of the file. So has it been a perfect process? No. Has it been an illegal process? Have we acted in bad faith? No. We're trying to solve a problem. Yeah, the recent correspondence, we did get recent correspondence over the weekend, and it's clear that there's still widely diverging views. So we're not quite there yet, you know. I think the next couple of weeks we need to still keep thinking about what we're listening, and in all sides, like, you know, I still see a lot of hatred, not in the devil sense, just like, you know, smile and be kind but hate them kind of thing from everybody. And again, I think we need to ask ourselves: do we want to break this community over this? Or do we want to, you know, really look at it? At the end of the day, the amendment that's being proposed is an hour and a half over 2 days adjustment, right? So, yeah, it's not going to satisfy everyone, but as Dr. Grief said, it's been a really tough issue to reach a compromise on. I think it's going to spill into next term, but I want to thank staff and everybody that keep plugging away at it, and the public engagement is a good thing, but until it gets to unnecessary language and attacks that I think are not warranted. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Grief.
Thanks very much, and thanks very much for the comments from the other director. What needs to be kept in mind here is the fact that this is very, very divisive in our community. And I think, you know, we don't need to prolong it. It's hemorrhaging. I don't think we're going to get the fringes on either side of this debate together on it. So we have to come up with a compromise down the middle. A lot of the points, I think, will be addressed through a proper land use rezoning. This is basically a Band-Aid to stop that hemorrhaging a little bit. As it is right now, we're almost, well, we're two-thirds way through the season anyway, so we're just about getting towards the end of the season. And if there is another application for proper zoning for the Speedway, that would be the appropriate time to have all these discussions and to have all the public consultation that we can put into that kind of a bylaw. But right now, I would definitely urge that we move ahead with this, because I do believe it's the best compromise. And I'll tell you, some people jump down my back when I use the word compromise, but I don't believe we're quite at the point where our southern neighbors are yet, where everybody's so tribalized and polarized that we can't come up with something in the middle. It's walking a tightrope for sure. But I do believe that this is the best possible solution right now to at least get us through to the next point when we actually get down to hammering out some kind of a proper zoning for the Speedway to let it operate into the future. Thank you.
Director Hamir, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. You know, I think it's important for the rural directors to all, speak to this, since it is such a big file, as Director Arbour mentioned. I'm going to support option one. You know, the shutdown at 5 o'clock on Sunday and the extension to 9:30 on Fridays and Saturdays. I just want to note, though, that, you know, when the first noise bylaw was tabled and supported with an 8 p.m. shutdown on every day, we weren't actually that far off. I mean, literally, it's an hour and a half on 2 of the nights where we're asking for an extension. So I think, you know, the adjustment that we're making in consultation with the operator, I don't think we got it too badly the first time around. You know, an hour and a half for those nights, I don't think would have shut down the Speedway. And, you know, obviously we're open to amending the bylaw now. My big concern, and it's been spoken to already by Director Grieve, was just how divisive this issue was in the community. So many people were under the assumption that this board was trying to shut down the Speedway. And that was never the intention. I never heard that at the table. And I'm really concerned about where the source of that came from. How did people in the community feel that this board wanted to shut down a business? And so I hope, you know, people who are here or who are listening on Zoom, maybe start to question, where did that rumor come from? Because it was never mentioned here. We discussed what non-conforming meant in bylaw terms, but it was never said that this is something that, you know, a business that we wanted to shut down. So I hope after the vote, it cools temperatures. People are, you know, seeing that maybe they got quick to anger. And as was mentioned, there, you know, we have neighbors in the community who, you know, we need to live with and live side by side with each other. So I hope after this vote, things go a little bit better. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Director Arbor?
Going full loop, would staff like to address whether we could kick the next round of ratings to the ESC, or do they feel like this is purely board at this point?
A decision to refer this to the next EASC is entirely within the board's rights, if that is what you want. By doing so, any subsequent amendments to the bylaw wouldn't be considered until the August 30th, and whatever the next board meeting is in September. So a referral is well within your rights, but it would have that implication of delaying the consideration of any readings of the bylaw.
Director Grant?
Thanks. Yeah, I think this issue's gone on for some time. I think everybody's had lots of time to think about this and what they want to do. Sounds to me like kicking it back to the ESC would just delay it further. And I think that if you were asked every person in this room, they'd want this over with sooner rather than later. So I wouldn't be in favor of kicking it back. I think we should just get on with it, make the decision, and get people back to their lives.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Yeah, I'm thinking on what Director Grant said. I'm thinking about whether we need a lot more time. I mean, we continually receive correspondence, including this weekend, of, I mean, there's such still gaps. And if we get it wrong, and maybe Dr. Grieve is right, maybe it's a Band-Aid for now, but with spending more time looking at different options, I will actually maybe defer to Dr. Grieve because that's his area. So I'll follow your gut instinct on that, whether you want to spend more time at ESC and discussing other options, or whether you want to just move forward with these options.
Okay. We're on receipt. Any further discussion of the report? I don't see any hands, so it's a vote of the areas. All in favor on receipt? None opposed, so that's carried unanimously, and there's a recommendation.
Move the recommendation to bring the bylaw back.
Moved by Grieve, seconded by Hamir. And so that's for the staff to prepare an amendment to the bylaw for the electoral area noise control regulation. And that's based on the staff report. So again, that would be with the limiting noise from auto racing Monday and Tuesday at all times, Wednesday and Thursday before 11 and after 8 p.m., Fridays and Saturdays before 11 a.m. and after 9:30 p.m., and Sundays before 11 a.m. and after 5 p.m. Any further discussion? Again, it's above the areas. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we don't have any petitions or delegations today. We have reports. So we have the Comox Valley Transit Management Advisory minutes from July 7th. Was that Arbor and Grieve? No, Arbor and Cole-Hampton. Thank you. Any discussion of those minutes? Okay, all in favor of receipt? Anyone opposed? That's carried.
If these people wanted to leave, since their issue is dealt with, then they could go and get back to swimming or whatever they do.
Yep, we can take 5 minutes. Go ahead. Thanks, Amanda. Okay. Call everyone back. We are on to Electoral Area Service Committee minutes from July 11th. Grieve and Grant, thank you. Any further discussion of those minutes? So vote of the full board. All in favor of receipt? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. And recommendation 1.
Second.
Grant and Grieve. So that's a development variance permit for Horn Street. Any further discussion? A vote of the areas. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. And recommendation 2. Grieve and Grant, thank you. Development variance permit for Edge Green Forest Products. Any further discussion? Again, in both the areas, all in favor? It's carried unanimously. Recommendation 3.
Second.
Grant and Grieve, you're doing all the work here. Development permit for Edge Green Forest Products. Any further discussion? And of all the areas, all in favor? That's carried unanimously, and we're on to recommendation 4.
Second. 4.
Grant and Grieve, thank you. And this is to request an exemption, bylaw 600, flood management bylaw for Baden and Eagle View Drive. Any further discussion? Okay, again, of both the areas, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. On to recommendation 5.
Second. 5.
Grant and Grieve, thank you. Development permit for Seaview Road. Any further discussion? Again, of both the areas, all in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously, and we're on to recommendation 6.
Second.
Grant and Cole-Hamilton.
Did she beat him by half a second?
Did she? Okay. Well, we'll rewrite that then. Amir and Cole-Hamilton. So that's for the agricultural land reserve non-adhering residential use application. Be referred to the ALC. Any further discussion? Dr. Hamir.
Yeah, ALR applications are always really sensitive for me, taking land out of production, adding extra homes. But I just wanted the rest of the board to know, we did deliberate on this for quite some time. And we had to look at some of the information that the applicant gave us. And some of the comments from our agricultural advisory. So even though our district agrologist did not recommend, we decided to move this forward, primarily because a road existed already, and putting a second home in would not impact the land as much as putting it where it was. So just a little bit of background on the issue.
Great, thank you for that. Any further discussion? Okay, a vote of the areas. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Recommendation 7. Hamir and Cole Hamilton, thank you. This is an update to the Comox Valley Agricultural Plan. Any further discussion on that? Again, a vote of the areas. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. And we're on to recommendation 8. Grant and Roran, thank you. And this is to rescind first, second, and third reading of Bylaw 694, which is Parkland Development Cost Charges Bylaw. So vote of full board. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried unanimously. On to recommendation 9.
Second.
Grant and Green, thank you. And that is a review of Bylaw 238, Parkland Development Cost Charge Bylaw. Any further discussion? Again, it's a vote of full board. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried unanimously. And we're on to item 4, which is the Comox Valley Sewage Commission minutes from July 12th.
Move receipt.
Hillian and Grant, you got it. Doug. Any further discussion of those minutes? Okay, it's both full board. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. And we're on to the Water Committee minutes from July 12th. Grant and Moran, thank you. Any discussion about those minutes? And it's both full board on receipt. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 6 is the Rec Commission minutes from July 12th. Grant and McCullum, thank you. And any discussion on those minutes? Okay, vote of full board on receipt. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And we're on to item 7, the Comox Valley Transition Society Agreement for Victim Services. Grieve and Grant, and I will pass it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. And Doug DeMarzo, General Manager of Community Services, will provide a brief update on this report. Doug.
Thank you and good afternoon through the chair to the directors. This is looking at entering into an agreement with the Comox Valley Transition Society for Victim Services. As a continuation of the contract, we have worked with CVTS since 2010. And the primary goals of this is to provide assistance to victims of crime, and it's worked from the RCMP detachment. It looks at critical incident response, providing information to victims about their rights under the Victims of Crime Act, safety planning for victims, information and referral considerations, general public awareness, and new to this contract is provide support to victims of crime and family court-related matters. Typically, we look at about 50% funding of this program, ranging from about $95,000 to $105,000 annually. And we're suggesting a 3-year term with an option to renew for an additional 2 years. This essentially covers 2 full-time workers out of the nonprofit, out of the RCMP detachment, working from a community-based system. With that, I'll leave it for any questions you may have.
Thanks, Doug. Are there any questions? Okay, we're on receipt. So both full board, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. And there
Heard
is
the
a
recommendation.
Hillian and Cole Hamilton, thank you. And the recommendation is that we continue and enter into the 3-year contract with the amounts not to exceed $105,000 annually. Any further discussion? Again, a vote of full board, all in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. And we're on to item 8, which is the homelessness support service funding allocation. Cole, Hamilton, and McCollum, thank you. I'll pass it to staff.
Thank you very much. And Alana Mullally, our General Manager of Planning and Development Services, is available for any questions. No specific presentation is prepared for this, but we can certainly provide an overview if needed. Otherwise, we are here for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, we're on receipt. It's a vote of ABC, Courtney, and Cumberland. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried, and there's a recommendation.
The recommendation.
Grant and Hillian, thank you. And that is that we provide $35,000 to the Comox Valley Transition Society as the fiscal host for the Coalition to End Homelessness. $30,000 to be used toward the cost of funding the coordinator position, and $5,000 to be used toward the cost of honoraria for peers. Any further discussion? Okay, again, it's a vote of the areas, Courtney and Cumberland. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We're on to bylaws and resolutions for first, second, and third reading. First, we have bylaw number 729. It's the district Parkland development cost charge bylaw.
Move first and second.
Wow. I'm not sure who was first or second on that one. Cole, Hamilton, and Grieve in unison. So that's a vote of the areas for first and second. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And for third?
Second.
Grieve and Cole, Hamilton for third. Thank you. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And we're on to item 2, which is bylaw 731, the remuneration and expenses bylaw.
Move first and second reading of 731. Second.
Grieve and Cole Hamilton have moved first and second. Any further discussion? It's a vote of the full board. All in favor? And that's unanimous. And on to third.
Move third.
Okay, all in favor of third? Any opposed? That's